The classroom was filled with laughter. Ms. Sanders, the strict but often mean teacher, pointed at Jamal, a quiet black boy sitting at the back. His clothes were old, his shoes scuffed, and his head hung low. "Why don't you dress like your classmates?" she sneered, her voice cutting through the room. The students laughed as Jamal's face turned red. He didn't respond. He just looked down, his heart sinking. Jamal's day got worse as whispers and giggles followed him wherever he went. What the teacher didn't know was that Jamal's father was no ordinary man. He was someone who would not let this injustice go unnoticed. Later that day, Jamal's father walked into the school. His presence alone made everyone stop and stare. Ms. Sanders' confidence faded as soon as she realized who was standing before her. What happens next is a moment of reckoning that the teacher and the school will never forget. Keep watching to find out how one father's actions turn humiliation into a lesson that changes everything. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and empower. The story takes place in a small suburban town where the divide between wealthy and struggling families is quietly present, but rarely spoken about. At Lincoln Elementary, where children from different backgrounds come together, the differences often become glaringly obvious. Jamal, a 10-year-old boy, comes from a hard-working but low-income family. His mother works 2 jobs, and his father, a respected figure in the community, often travels for his work. Despite their struggles, Jamal is a bright and kind-hearted student who dreams of becoming a scientist someday. The classroom is where Jamal usually feels at peace, but today was different. His teacher, Ms. Sanders, had a reputation for being overly strict and sometimes insensitive. Known for favoring students from wealthy families, she rarely showed patience toward those who struggled financially. That day, Jamal walked into the classroom wearing his usual faded jeans and a plain shirt. He took his seat quietly, hoping to avoid attention. However, Ms. Sanders had other plans. She began the lesson as usual, but her sharp gaze soon landed on Jamal. She frowned at his outfit and decided to make an example of him, turning a math problem into a humiliating spectacle about his clothes. Jamal's classmates, most of whom came from more privileged families, found her remarks funny. Laughter erupted in the room, and Jamal felt like the walls were closing in on him. His classmates' mocking eyes burned into him, and he wished he could disappear. What no one in the room realized was that Jamal's father had returned to town that morning. A man of principle, he believed in standing up for what was right and ensuring his family was treated with respect. As Jamal's day unfolded, so did the events that would lead to a confrontation no one at Lincoln Elementary would forget. The stage was set for a lesson not in math, but in respect, dignity, and understanding. What started as a moment of cruelty would soon transform into a story of reckoning and redemption. The day started like any other for Jamal. He woke up early, helped his younger sister get ready for school, and ate breakfast prepared by his mother before heading to Lincoln Elementary. Jamal, though young, had always carried a sense of responsibility and maturity beyond his years. However, he never expected the humiliation he would face that day. Jamal arrived at school dressed in his usual outfit. His shirt was neatly ironed, though it showed signs of wear, and his shoes had been polished the night before. He entered the classroom quietly, hoping to blend in as he usually did. But Ms. Sanders, his teacher, had a different plan. The lesson began as usual, with Ms. Sanders writing equations on the board and calling on students to answer. When it was Jamal's turn, he stood up confidently and gave the correct answer. But instead of commending him, Ms. Sanders paused, her gaze sweeping over his appearance. She smirked and made a comment that froze the room. "Well, Jamal, at least you got the answer right. It's Good to see your brain works better than your wardrobe." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The classroom erupted into laughter, with some students pointing at Jamal's faded shirt and scuffed shoes. Others whispered to each other, their mocking glances piercing him like daggers. Jamal's face flushed with embarrassment, but he stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. Ms. Sanders continued, seemingly oblivious to the pain her words had caused. "Class," she said, addressing the room. "This is why we should all strive to look our best. Appearance matters, doesn't it?" The laughter grew louder, and Jamal could feel tears welling up in his eyes. He quickly looked down, not wanting anyone to see how deeply the words had affected him. He wished the floor would swallow him up. Unbeknownst to everyone in the classroom, Jamal's father, David, had returned to town early that morning. David, a prominent civil rights lawyer, had taken the day off to surprise his children. When Jamal's mother told him about the teacher's previous remarks about their son's clothes, David decided to quietly visit the school later that day to address the issue. He had no idea just how badly the situation would escalate. As the day went on, Jamal's classmates continued to whisper and giggle about the incident. By lunchtime, the story of Ms. Sanders' remarks had spread throughout the school. Students from other classes came by to get a look at the boy whose teacher had publicly shamed him. When David arrived at the school to speak with Ms. Sanders, he was met with polite indifference by the staff. They assured him that Ms. Sanders was an excellent teacher and that any complaints would be reviewed. But as he approached the classroom, he overheard another sharp remark from Ms. Sanders, further ridiculing Jamal. David's heart sank and anger rose within him. He opened the classroom door, and the room fell silent as every eye turned toward him. His calm yet commanding presence filled the space, and Ms. Sanders' confident smirk faltered for the first time that day. What followed would become the lesson of a lifetime for Ms. Sanders and a turning point for Lincoln Elementary. But at that moment, all Jamal knew was that his father had arrived, and for the first time that day, he felt hope. David stepped into the classroom with calm confidence. His sharp suit and briefcase instantly commanded attention, making it clear he was no ordinary parent. Jamal's classmates stared in silence, sensing the intensity in the air. Ms. Sanders looked up, momentarily startled before regaining her composure. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone sharp and defensive. "Yes, you can," David replied, his voice calm yet firm. "I am David Carter, Jamal's father. I understand there's been an issue in this classroom regarding my son." Ms. Sanders blinked, taken aback by his directness. She glanced at Jamal, who sat quietly at his desk, eyes fixed on the floor. Trying to deflect, she said, "We were just having a discussion about the importance of presentation. It is a teaching moment, you see." "A teaching moment?" David repeated, his eyebrows raising slightly. "What exactly was the lesson? That it's acceptable to mock a child for their appearance?" The students sat in stunned silence. Ms. Sanders' confident demeanor began to crack as she tried to defend herself. "I was only encouraging Jamal to take pride in how he presents himself. It was meant to be constructive criticism." David's gaze remained steady. Constructive criticism should uplift, not humiliate. From what I overheard and from what Jamal's mother has told me, your comments were far from constructive. Ms. Sanders looked around the room, clearly searching for an escape. "I meant no harm," she insisted, but her voice faltered. David set his briefcase down and stepped closer to Jamal, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Jamal, stand up," he said gently. Jamal hesitated but obeyed. Addressing the class, David spoke firmly but kindly. "This is my son, Jamal. He is smart, hardworking, and kind. The clothes he wears do not define his worth or his potential. None of us should be judged by our appearance, especially not by those entrusted to guide and nurture us. The class hung on to every word, the gravity of the moment sinking in. Even Ms. Sanders seemed frozen in place, unable to respond. Turning back to Ms. Sanders, David said, "Your job as an educator is to inspire and support, not belittle. My son came here to learn, not to be made a spectacle of. If you cannot fulfill that responsibility with respect, you have no place teaching." The tension in the room was palpable. Ms. Sanders opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the school principal, Mr. Harding, appeared at the door, alerted by the commotion. "What is going on here?" he asked, his tone firm. David turned to address him. "Mr. Harding, I was just addressing Ms. Sanders about her behavior toward my son. I would appreciate a moment of your time to discuss this further." Mr. Harding, sensing the seriousness of the situation, nodded. "Of course, Mr. Carter. Let's step into my office." David glanced back at Jamal and gave him a reassuring nod. "I will handle this, son. You stay strong." As David and Mr. Harding left the room, the students exchanged whispers, their earlier amusement replaced with guilt and respect for Jamal. Ms. Sanders stood frozen, her face pale, as the weight of her actions began to dawn on her. The air in the principal's office was tense as David sat across from Mr. Harding and Ms. Sanders. The principal looked uneasy, shifting in his chair, while Ms. Sanders sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact. David's calm and composed demeanor only heightened the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Carter," Mr. Harding began, "I understand you are upset. I assure you we take concerns about our staff's behavior very seriously. Please, explain your perspective." David leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "It is not just my perspective. It is the truth. My son Jamal was humiliated in front of his peers because of how he dresses. Ms. Sanders did not teach him anything that day. Instead, she embarrassed him for something he cannot control." Ms. Sanders opened her mouth to speak, but David raised a hand calmly. "I am not finished. My wife and I work hard to provide for our family. Jamal is a bright young boy who excels in school despite the challenges he faces. Yet, instead of fostering his growth, he was torn down by someone who should have been his biggest supporter here." Mr. Harding nodded slowly. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Carter. Ms. Sanders, do you have anything to say?" Ms. Sanders looked flustered, her usual confidence replaced with nervousness. "I only meant to encourage Jamal. I did not think my words would hurt him." David's gaze was unyielding. "Words carry weight, especially when they come from someone in a position of authority. Whether you intended harm or not, you failed to consider the impact of your actions." Mr. Harding cleared his throat, sensing the tension. "Ms. Sanders, it is clear there was a serious lapse in judgment. We will need to address this formally." David stood, pulling out a file from his briefcase and placing it on the desk. "Before you decide on any actions, I believe you should know who you are dealing with. I am not just Jamal's father. I am David Carter, an attorney specializing in civil rights. I have spent years fighting against injustices like this." Ms. Sanders's face turned pale as the weight of his words sank in. Mr. Harding's eyebrows shot up in surprise. David continued, his voice unwavering. "I have no intention of dragging this into court, but I will not stand by and let my son or any other child face this kind of treatment. This is not just about Jamal. It is about creating an environment where every child feels safe and valued." The principal nodded. "Mr. Carter, I assure you we will take immediate steps to address this. Ms. Sanders will be placed under review, and we will implement training to ensure this does not happen again." David turned to Ms. Sanders. I hope you take this as a learning opportunity. Children look up to their teachers. You have the power to shape their futures. Do not use that power to break them." Ms. Sanders finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I am sorry, Mr. Carter. I truly am. I never meant to cause harm." David nodded, his expression softening slightly. "Apologies are a start. Actions matter more." He stood, gathering his briefcase. "Thank you, Mr. Harding, for your cooperation. I will be keeping an eye on how the school addresses this." As David left the office, he found Jamal waiting outside, his eyes filled with worry. David knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "It is done, son. No one will treat you that way again." Jamal smiled, his confidence beginning to return. Together they walked out of the school, leaving behind an institution that would never be the same. The news of what happened in Ms. Sanders' classroom spread quickly. Parents whispered about it in the school parking lot, and students shared their own accounts of the incident. Jamal's classmates described how their teacher mocked him for his clothing in front of everyone. The story soon reached the larger community, and it ignited strong reactions. Social media played a big role in amplifying the story. One student who had secretly recorded part of the classroom exchange uploaded the video online. The clip showed Ms. Sanders' dismissive tone as she commented on Jamal's outfit. The video quickly went viral, with thousands of people sharing it and expressing outrage. "This is unacceptable," one parent wrote. "Teachers are supposed to build children up, not tear them down." Others called for immediate action. "Fire her," another commenter demanded. "This behavior has no place in our schools." The school administration could not ignore the public outcry. Mr. Harding called an emergency meeting with the school board. The board members were shocked by the video and the details of the incident. "This goes against everything we stand for," one board member said. "We must act swiftly to rebuild trust with the community." Meanwhile, David received countless messages of support. Local activists and community leaders reached out, offering their assistance. Some organized a peaceful rally outside the school to demand accountability. The signs they carried reflected the collective anger and disappointment. "Support our kids," "End classroom bullying," and "Teachers must be role models." David spoke at the rally, his voice firm but measured. "This is not just about my son. It is about ensuring that every child feels safe and valued in their learning environment. We must hold our educators to a higher standard." Jamal stood beside his father, watching the crowd with wide eyes. He felt a sense of pride and relief. For the first time since the incident, he realized he was not alone. Inside the school, Ms. Sanders faced increasing pressure. Parents wrote letters demanding her resignation, and some even threatened to pull their children from the school if no action was taken. Ms. Sanders tried to defend herself, claiming she never intended to hurt Jamal. But her words rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming evidence against her. Mr. Harding met with Ms. Sanders privately. "You have placed this school in a very difficult position," he said. "Your actions have damaged not only Jamal, but also the trust between teachers and students. We cannot allow this to go unaddressed." The school board ultimately decided to suspend Ms. Sanders while a full investigation was conducted. They also announced mandatory sensitivity training for all staff members. "This is a wake-up call for our school," Mr. Harding said in a public statement. "We must do better for our students and our community." The story gained attention beyond the local level. News outlets picked it up, and soon it became a national conversation. People debated the role of teachers in shaping young minds and the impact of prejudice in the classroom. Experts discussed the importance of empathy and cultural awareness in education. Amid the chaos, Jamal's voice stood out, In an interview with a local news station, he said, "I just want to learn without feeling ashamed of who I am. My dad always tells me to hold my head high, and I am trying to do that." The community's response was overwhelming. Donations poured in to support Jamal's future education. Parents volunteered to create a mentorship program for students who might feel marginalized. Teachers from other schools reached out, offering their apologies and pledging to do better. David watched all of this unfold with a mix of gratitude and determination. He knew that real change would take time, but he felt encouraged by the progress being made. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We need to keep pushing for a better future for all our children." As the investigation progressed, the focus shifted to rebuilding the school's reputation and addressing the underlying issues. Jamal's story became a catalyst for change, inspiring important conversations about respect, empathy, and inclusion in the classroom. David took the opportunity to emphasize the lessons everyone could learn from this incident. At a community meeting, he shared a message of growth and understanding. "We all make mistakes," he said, "but it is how we respond to those mistakes that defines us. Let this be a turning point for all of us." The school district announced a series of initiatives to ensure that such incidents would not happen again. They introduced cultural sensitivity workshops for all teachers and staff, focusing on building an inclusive environment. Parents were invited to participate in these workshops, fostering a stronger connection between families and educators. David decided to take an active role in the changes. He partnered with local leaders to create a program aimed at educating students and teachers about the importance of diversity and kindness. "Every child deserves to feel valued," he said. "It starts with us as adults showing them the right way." Ms. Sanders, meanwhile, faced a difficult journey of self-reflection. During her suspension, she attended the sensitivity training sessions and worked with mentors who helped her understand the impact of her actions. She also reached out to David and Jamal to offer a heartfelt apology. In a private meeting, Ms. Sanders admitted, "I let my biases cloud my judgment. I hurt you, Jamal, and I am truly sorry for what I did." Her voice trembled as she spoke, and tears filled her eyes. David listened carefully before responding. "It is not easy to admit when we are wrong," he said. "What matters now is how you move forward. If you are sincere about making a change, we are willing to support you." Jamal, though hesitant at first, accepted her apology. "I forgive you," he said softly, "but I hope you will treat everyone better from now on." The moment marked a turning point for Ms. Sanders. She realized that forgiveness was not something to take lightly, and it motivated her to become a better teacher. When she returned to the classroom, she made a conscious effort to connect with her students and create a positive environment. Jamal's classmates noticed the change too. "She is different now," one student said. "She listens more, and she tries to understand us." The school community also came together to support Jamal and his family. Parents organized a special event to celebrate Jamal's resilience, honoring him for his courage and strength. Teachers shared stories of how the incident had inspired them to reevaluate their own practices. David continued to advocate for change beyond the school. He spoke at conferences and workshops, sharing his story and encouraging others to take action. "This is not just about my son," he said. "It is about creating a better future for all children." The impact of Jamal's story extended far and wide. It inspired other students and families to speak out against injustice, knowing that their voices could make a difference. The mentorship program that David helped establish flourished, providing guidance and support to countless students who had felt overlooked or misunderstood. In the end, The incident became a powerful example of how a painful experience could lead to growth and transformation. The school district, the community, and even Ms. Sanders herself learned valuable lessons about respect, empathy, and the importance of standing up for what is right. Jamal, now more confident than ever, carried those lessons with him. "My dad always says that we can turn challenges into opportunities," he said. "I think he is right. This experience has made me stronger." As David and Jamal walked out of the school that day, they felt a renewed sense of hope. They knew that there was still work to be done, but they also knew that they had taken the first steps toward building a more compassionate and inclusive world. The story of Jamal and his father David is not just about a single event of injustice. It is about resilience, forgiveness, and the power of change. This incident showed that even in the face of humiliation and discrimination, courage and truth can prevail. Jamal's journey from being shamed to becoming a symbol of strength inspired many. His ability to forgive Ms. Sanders highlighted the importance of letting go of anger and working toward understanding. David's calm yet firm response became a lesson for parents everywhere. It showed how standing up for your child with dignity and purpose can lead to meaningful change. The changes in the school were a reflection of the community's willingness to learn and grow. The sensitivity workshops, the mentorship programs, and the renewed focus on inclusion were steps in the right direction. These efforts showed that a single act of standing up against wrong could ripple into a larger movement of improvement. Ms. Sanders's transformation was a reminder that people can learn from their mistakes. Her apology to Jamal and her commitment to change demonstrated that redemption is possible if there is genuine effort. The way she turned her classroom into a safe and inclusive space showed the impact of self-reflection and education. For Jamal, this experience was more than just a moment of standing up against humiliation. It taught him to believe in himself and to value his identity. He realized that his worth was not determined by what he wore, but by who he was. As the story spread, it sparked important conversations across schools and communities. It encouraged others to address their own biases and to create environments where every child could thrive. The incident became a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that no one should be judged by their appearance or background. David's words at the final community meeting summed up the lessons perfectly. "We all have a role to play in making this world a better place," he said. "Let us teach our children kindness, empathy, and the strength to stand up for what is right. That is how we create lasting change." The story of Jamal and David left a lasting impact on the school, the community, and everyone who heard it. It was a story of standing against wrong, of choosing forgiveness over anger, and of using one's voice to bring about change. What would you have done if you were in Jamal's place? Do you believe forgiveness is as powerful as standing up for justice? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do not forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.